Hey guys, it is Chad here from the Battle Warrior Podcast, and I'm just letting all you listeners know that the Battle Warrior Podcast episodes will be available across all podcast platforms, guys. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this brand new episode today.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
Let's go.
Started.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to Battle Warrior Podcast. We are in the middle of a chit chat here, but I got Philip Sessions on the other end here, guys. He is a Christian podcaster, author. I'm just gonna go off his Facebook. Husband, girl, dad, good brother. He's in a lot of groups I'm in, and overall, we've been speaking to each other for what, couple months?
Yeah, I'd say a couple months now.
And he's a brother just like me. So we were talking about we were talking Christianity and churches and stuff going into it, but you hit the nail on the head. And that's the thing that I was fighting with at the beginning. I always fight with, because down south, and I'm gonna say down south, but like Tennessee lower is where I'm going to draw the line. A lot of the churches tend to mix church and business together versus up north, or even the Northeast tend to just go church, and like you said, business is taboo. So I'm like, we got a topic and we got to talk about it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because like Tennessee down south of that is really like the Bible Belt. So I would still say they're that same way, where it's still very religious, and that's what you talk about. It's not necessarily like, you don't talk about success in a physical sense, in a business sense. You don't talk about money either, just in any sense. And even when you talk about money, it's about giving. And the most we'll go into that is tithing, all right, which is a Old Testament scripture, an Old Testament, law, but it's not necessarily a set law like that, where it's like tithe this much. It's just give, not out of necessity or begrudgingly, but out of your heart. What's that? Second Corinthians or First Corinthians 16:2 talks about that. And so, and then 2 Corinthians 9:7. But anyway, so, giving out of your heart, out of really what you want to give, is all the scripture talks about in the New Testament. But that's all we talk about when it comes to money. Well, I guess, and then the root of all evil, or the love of money is the root of all evil, right? All right, and it's like, but it's not money. Money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And really, that love is that lusting of money, and only to me, to be pompous, to be somebody who is better than everybody else because I have all this money. I'm rich and wealthy, and you're not as good as me because of that. And that's not the thing. And Chad, just from our conversations, I can tell that's not you either, man. Like, money is important, but it's because it's going to be a tool for you and I to be able to pour back into our businesses as we build them, and then eventually pour back into others. And for me, for my family, and for you, your future family, future wife and everything, whatever comes, for you in relationships wise. But that's the point of you making that money. And so you can help spread a good message. You can help people out and help further the kingdom in the end, because it takes money to make a lot of things happen, especially in our society today.
Well, and that's the thing we were discussing. That topic got brought up here a couple of weeks ago, and just in the last couple of weeks, because what happens is you get someone who's, like you said, grew up in the system, and I'm gonna say system, guys. It's not the system. I'm just explaining it this way. Grew up around that, and then you have someone who's very business minded. So it's there's like a black and white. There's no in between where they overlap them. Nowadays it's starting to be that way. And the thing about it is, I might get struck for this, I might not get struck for this. I'm just going to answer it this way, but like, it's a tool. So like, guys, it's not love. Like, there's a different 4-letter word that it's for. So it's like a hammer in your hand. It's a tool that you use. Would I love all the fancy stuff? Yes, I would love all the fancy stuff. Do I want all the fancy stuff? No. Can I live without all the fancy stuff? Yeah, 100%. Like I would be perfectly fine in a, like what I got right now, Nissan Rogue versus like having a Lambo. I mean, that just, it still gets me to point A, point B. Would it be fun to have all the toys and stuff? Oh yeah. Like one day it'd be like you have
Mm,
it and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, cool. What's next? Like sell it, whatever. That's the nature of the rotation of that stuff. But the thing that I'm more focused on is, okay, hypothetical, I go to a decent sized church. You potentially your church is decent size. Okay. So like they want to open, how do we expand this? How do we looking at financial? How do we look at these wings? How do we look at programs? And it's not like me and you are making money to make this huge, massive 100, $200 million business. It's the, hey man, do you need 10 grand? Do you need 20 grand? Do you need 50? Do
mm,
you need, $5? Whatever it is, you have the ability and the freedom to issue that check and say, okay, hey man, don't worry about it. I got that, not me, but do whatever you want with it. And we got that situated here for the church. So for me, that's where I look at is like the full cycle of it. Because obviously, as much as they don't want to say it, man, pastors do get paid, and
mm.
in order to grow, you gotta, grow your own giving and all that stuff. So, um, I don't know why it was on my top the last couple of weeks, but I think what it is just people have that fear of seeking approval, and it's almost like they feel like they're going to get, to me, letting him down.
Yeah. And I think a big thing is that people see money and they associate it with being evil, and they associate it with people that aren't good, godly people. There's so many people that make money, and a lot of them, even in groups we're in, they're not necessarily a godly person. They're just a good-hearted person, and they donate tons of money, and they probably donate and volunteer more than these Christians that have been Christians since they were born. And yet there's somebody that's not a Christian or doesn't really go to church, or whatever their situation is. They're not active in the church like somebody else may be, and they do way more for the church or for people just in general. And so money really, like you said, it's a tool, but it also, when you have money, it just it,
Life's a
it,
lot
it,
easier.
it makes life easier, but I want to say extenuates, but that doesn't make sense. But it exemplifies. I can't think of the right word, but it magnifies. There we go. It magnifies who you are as a person. So who you are as a person with no money. If you're a good person when you have a lot of money, more likely than not, you're going to be a good person. And if you're a terrible, bad person with no money, you're going to be even worse, bad person with money, because now you can do those evil things more. You can do those bad things more. And same thing with having more money and being good. You can do a lot more good things now. And I love that you mentioned about being able to give money. That's one thing that I've mentioned before in the past, is that I would love one day to have so much money that somebody at church is like, their car broke down, they're just having a hard time, and go buy them like a $5,000 or $10,000 car, and not even think about it, don't even notice it in my bank account or anything like that. It's just wrote the check, said, hey, go out and get them a car, and just say, here's their car. Don't say it's from me or anything like that. Just and I don't have to worry about that money. Like, that would be awesome to me. That's wealth in my eyes, to be able to write a check like that. And I know some people that is nothing, but I would like to be able to do that.
Yeah, and this Christmas I actually kind of did, certain things in the neighborhood when it came to that stuff. Yes, I'm very highly active in my church. I love where I go. I'm in tech crew. I'm also doing behind the scenes tech for a perspectives class.
Mm,
I'm there probably for sure once a week, and then if I'm on the tech crew, that week there, I'm probably there 12 hours a week, if not more. It's just between classes and tech and prep and practice and all that stuff. Like, it's a for sure full day worth of um, time there. But in general, like walking up and issuing paid forward meals and all that stuff, where it's like, I remember that guy turned to me. He's like, everyone must have came in and bought $5 worth or $10 worth, whatever. And I'm not going to say the amount. I don't need to. That's between me and him and the guy. But I'm like, hey, do this X amount. He's like, excuse me. I'm like, do this X amount. He's like, why? I'm like, because you have a billboard back there that's empty and I want to fill it up. I'm like, that's your paid forward meals. He's like, seriously. I'm like, how much? I'm like, this is what I'm going to give you. How much can we like feed people around here? And not joking. I mean, it was a lot more sincere and stuff at that time, but he's like, in the girls behind the bar, or the bar, but like the coffee joint, she's like, well, do we put your name down? What do we say on Facebook or whatever? I'm like, no. I'm like, just put this down, put it up there. And she's like, you don't want your name on this? I'm like, I don't like, I care, obviously, but
Well,
I'm
that's
like,
not what it's about.
it's not. I'm like, put this on there, like change culture or something simple and small. I'm like, throw it up there. They're like, you don't want your name. I'm like, I want nothing to do with that. I'm like, I'm doing it as a thank you for serving the community. And I'm like, I want zero name mentions in that.
Man, that's awesome that you did that. And a lot of people, it's interesting how people act towards like giving. And I know some people do want that recognition, but if you're giving, and you're wanting that recognition, it really, to me, that defeats the purpose of the giving, because now it's like you gave just so you can show that you gave so much and you're like bragging about it. No, it really just doesn't make sense to me. You should definitely be humble in your giving. And and I don't know if you've heard, but in the circles I'm in, a lot of people talk about givers gain. It's very interesting how the more we give, the more we actually get in return. But to me, the caveat is that you have to give without expecting anything in return to actually see that return. So if you're constantly just giving, hoping to receive something, it's not going to happen. So you have to do it out of the kindness of your heart, and then you will start receiving something from that.
Yeah. And it's the random, on top of my head, I'm just going to go through a few things. So like the random fundraisers for, sports, the random fundraisers for classrooms. Like I said, paid for meals or whatever it is. It's, lately, obviously, just like normal, like it comes and goes, which you still want to maintain your 10%. That's just, or at least attempt to get to 10%. And, but yeah, like for me, just the randomness of it, be like, okay, hey, I want to do this, or vice versa, man. Like, and I'll be brutally honest, but like if Spirit says, dude, go do it, go do it. Like, and the rule of thumb for me is if you hear it a couple times, that means you gotta go do it.
Yeah. We're commanded to give on the first day of the week, right? But we're supposed to be good stewards with our money. And so if the church that you're giving to isn't a good steward, you need to find somewhere else to be able to give that. And that's not the only time we should give, even though we're told to give on the first day of the week. We shouldn't only give on the first day of the week. We should be trying to do that at all times. And it not only money. I know we've been talking about money, but it's anything, time, love, just showing appreciation, being, going back to time, but being on the phone to have that listening ear for somebody, giving that advice, whatever it is. There's so many opportunities to give, and it doesn't have to be money. Is I don't know about you, man, but when I'm giving back to people, when I'm helping people out, talking through conversations, or even just sometimes even just listening, man, my heart and my cup just becomes so full from doing that. And it's so much better than anything else out there to me.
Yeah. And I don't want to say my issue. My issue right now is just bonkers, and you get it, man. So like we can transfer into this, but like when you launch a product, and the world finds out, all of a sudden, like the time that you have that we're fighting so hard for with the finances, with the tools and stuff, just gets gone.
Yeah.
So it's just like you and trying to build businesses and stuff, man. Like I'm sitting here going, I'm like, how am I going to fit all this in?
Yeah. And man, it comes out of time blocking, and I'm still getting better at that. I've realized I finally wrote down a schedule for myself, and it's not 100%, 100% proof. And I already had somebody who's very good about scheduling. I had posted it on my story, and they said, well, where's your time between all these things for you to kind of do a debrief and review what you just did? I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, but it's all about starting somewhere. And so I'm adding those times in there for my debriefs and giving myself more time. And I realized that I have more time than I thought to work on the quote unquote side hustle, to be able to work on the business that I'm working on outside of the 9 to 5. And I think if we start time blocking, we will end up finding that time that we thought we didn't have. Because I don't know about you, but I find myself times where I'm just on the phone scrolling through Facebook, or even sitting on a pot, man. I'll be sitting on a pot way longer than I expect. And I'm like, oh crap, man. Or I'm just, no pun intended there. But, just spending time with my wife and daughter, which is obviously an important thing for me, especially right now with my daughter being so young. But I do find that I end up wasting this time, and with this time block, I realize, okay, I can do these things because it's not like they need 100% attention at that time. I'm trying to be more intentional with that, but sometimes, especially my wife, it's just more about me being in the room and not necessarily like totally focused on her 100%. And so if I can make Facebook comments or Instagram comments and make some engagement with people and make my post while we're sitting there hanging out together, even if we're not necessarily talking, but it's just sometimes about being physically in that room together. But you have to find ways. And for me, doing the time blocking has helped a lot, but then just finding ways to, I guess, kind of multitask or figure out where you can insert different things that you need to get done in those times. But yeah, I mean, it is difficult to try and juggle everything, and you're really kind of giving up something at the end of the day. And every time you dedicate time to one thing, you're sacrificing time on everything else, of course, or should be. You shouldn't be trying to do three or four things at once.
Yeah, and then you end up like me.
Yeah. Hey, man, we've all been there. Yeah, I'm there sometimes, or a lot of times as well. So don't beat yourself up too bad about that.
No, and I'm joking, and this is exactly the same topic that I was talking actually 12 hours ago here. Not to someone else, but just personally. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, something has to either be paused or shelved for right now. Because obviously, I mean, I'm like you, where we have this going, this going, this going, this going. You want to get a Paraline going, you want to do all this stuff going, and all of a sudden, like, you have time for three things, and then now you got to wedge in. I not say wedge, but like for me, no matter what, Sunday, if I'm not working, is church. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, I'm going.
Yeah.
I have a class through church on that one, so like no matter what, that time is devoted on this day. But when we're looking at personal life, friendship, friends, family, all that stuff, all of a sudden I'm looking, I'm like, wow, because like this block total is, I work 12 days straight in a row, and then I get 2 days off. So what happens is the days I have off, I tend to go do worship. So like technically I would only have 1 day off then. And all of a sudden now your list, just like everyone, your list has 500 things to do and 500 people to see. And, if you're looking at a personal private life, with, significant other, girlfriend, whatever it is, obviously, time is a big deal. So you got to make sure you're with that and family. This is a balancing act, or the juggling game is what, and I joke when people are like, hey, we just do this and do this, do this. I'm like, can I have a normal schedule for once?
Yeah, right. So how did you go about prioritizing those things? Now you say you had all these things and you've narrowed it down to some. So how did you decide what things to do?
Right now I'm actually going to back out of, I have the Paraline design, but I'm going to back out of that. So I'm going to just delay that until I get near May timeframe, give or take, because there's a few things coming in March and April that I need to put more devoted time in. So Paraline's going to kind of be backed off. Obviously now it's very heavy book focused. So the books are going to be absorbing with any PR work, behind the scenes work, advertising work, all that stuff. That's going to take up hour or two a week, give or take, if not more, depends on if I'm on, PR stuff. So obviously, when we have 6 or 7 things, that's the last in line is the one that you have to delay.
Yeah.
and put on the shelf. So that's what I'm looking at right now. And I love creating clothes. Like between
Mhm.
podcasts and creating clothes, I would have a traditional amazing day. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm so devoted in trying to get that going. And obviously, yeah, I have my own nutrition line that is already, the foundation's already there for that.
Mhm.
So now I can shift on and off. I don't want to use that term on and off, but like, the run and joke, what we do in the long run is check in, check out. So like the website's up and running, the product's up and running. Now
Mhm.
it's okay. So the bulk of the stuff is done. So now looking at is okay, now we have advertising. Who do I need to go see? Who do the shows and all that stuff? So you're pretty much, from my side of it, even though I have, I would say 15, 20, 15 hours of good hours to work
Mhm.
over and above what my work is. Um, it's what takes priority that week is what I focus on. So, hour or two of the book, PR work. And then obviously you got 2, 3 hours of editing podcasts,
Mhm.
like what we're talking about here. And you got PR work, editing podcasts and stuff. So what it sounds like on my end is I need virtual VA pretty much is what we call them. But yeah, when budget's tight and you're rolling on a tight budget trying to build everything, you're the VA, you're the
Yeah.
marketer, you're the advertiser, you're everything, trying to put
Mhm.
on all those
Mhm.
hats. And it's amazing, it's rewarding, but um as what someone told me today, it's you're in the process, you're climbing up. There will be that day when it does convert and you go full time, but until that, we're going to be fighting for time and just fighting for everything. So it's that's how I prioritize. I'm kind of like a controlled chaos type of guy. I don't want to use that term, but it's everyone that knows me very well knows my mind's kind of all over the place. I don't want to use the term special because that's not the best way of saying it, but it's 500 parts moving. The more chaotic it is, the more I'm focused, and just how I keep my focus in line.
Yeah.
My issue is burning out, not burnout where I'm sick of doing it. It's burning out where like I don't have enough energy to keep doing what I'm like, keep going during the week. So I've been um, a lot more unhealthier the last month or two. But
Mhm.
I had a few big projects like we were talking about where I had to get them out for a time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It comes in ebbs and flows for sure. Yeah. And I like to try and look long term, what's going to be more impactful for people long term as well as for myself and my business. And so that's one thing I was talking about writing my second book here and finishing it at the end of the first quarter, which, recording this, we got about a month left of that first quarter, and I have not started on it, minus like the first chapter, which is kind of a preview in my first book I launched. But I realized that the coaching business, the membership group that we were talking about offline, is what I needed to focus more time on. And of course, family and my daughter and everything, really try to enjoy that time and soak up this time, because it's crazy how fast they grow. Everybody talks about it and you don't really believe it until you're like really in it. But really just trying to prioritize things like that. And so the coaching group, the membership group, is what I really had to focus on. So there's still plans to write that book this year, but definitely not by the end of the first quarter anymore. And so, like you, I've had to shift priorities and push some stuff out as well, and just try to, what long term can I impact more people as well as impact my family, because getting a book out there is awesome. It's an awesome feeling, because I know exactly where you're at right now with the pre-launch and the launch coming up and everything. But having that coaching business there, that'll bring in more money for me, so then I can help my family and then help others as well a lot more than doing sales on a book, because I'm not there yet where my books just explodes and becomes number one bestseller like for New York Times and everything. But eventually it'll get there. But it's all about that impact and just slowly having those little things coming in, and just be able to have ways for people to find you and get to know you a little bit more. So the book will come, but it's not the priority at the moment because of other things that took um took precedence over it.
Well, and the question I'm going to ask you is, I'm in that uncertainty mode, and not uncertainty because of the negativity and all that stuff. I'm not that. It's
Mm,
when you've just launched a product, you don't know who's going to get it, what's going to get it, what's going to
Mm,
happen, how it's going to happen. So, um, prior to launch, my body was just in general going, what the heck am I happening? Am I good enough? All that stuff. And this is my first one. So I mean, like the
yeah.
next go around, I'll be like, okay, this is how you write it and send it out and all that stuff. But no matter what, you want to, I think the expectation is you want to put so much value into this that you don't know where the cutoff line is. And
Mm,
and I had that multiple times with the publisher. He's like, brotherly, you got to stop. Like, we have plenty. Just send it
yeah.
out the door. And now I totally get it, but it's when we're looking at the book launch, and I'm a week into mine, and I'm not even at the launch. I mean, people are still getting it now.
Mm.
You're what, a year into yours now?
So it was back in June of last year. So yeah, about, I guess 8 months in.
And
So,
are
but
the
my
like,
launch, I totally messed up on, man. I did it through KDP and I did it all myself. So I didn't really get any help. And it was funny. I talked to Mike Fallett about like, hey, what's kind of the best day or what's not good days to do it? He said, don't do it Sunday. And so if I'm like here working on the weekend, trying to get it all done, 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, and all of a sudden, oh, it's live. I'm like, what? Like, so my launch was terrible, and I totally went against what he said to do, but it was by mistake. Because I'm like, oh, okay, I thought I saved it, but I guess I hit publish, and I was like, okay, I got the paperback done first, and I was going to the ebook. The Kindle version. I'm like, well, wait a second, that's live. And I'm like, okay, scrambling to tell people, hey, my book's live. And like, so my launch was terrible. It was not the best way to do it. I didn't do any kind of like, pre-launch or anything, talking about it, marketing it, hardly at all. So yeah, I can't give any good advice on how to launch a book.
well,
I
the
give advice on what
advice,
not to do.
the advice that I'm gonna give to everyone or whatever is the thing that he's even known for saying. It's like that is like an entry. It's like a key to get you in different doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
notice it or not, but like people that you would see in the community, just kind of, hey, how's it going? As like you're walking in a building, all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
like you hand them the book, they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And then
Yeah.
like for me, it was like an hour or two later that and everyone at the location I went to is like, hey, can you volunteer tonight? Can you do this? I'm
Mm.
like, sorry guys, I would love to, but I can't. And
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, man. And it's like you have a business card, you give a business card to somebody, it's like, whatever. You talk to them about like, yeah, I've got a podcast. Oh, you do? And like then they pull out their phone, they're like looking up your podcast, and then you're like, oh, I got a book. And like, what? You got a book? And it's just like this different level. It's pretty crazy. And it's still so weird to me, or especially like social media videos too. Like I heard somebody in the office that they listen to my video, and I'm like, what? Like this, it just sounds so weird to hear my voice and somebody like watching it. So it's always weird that people are like talking about you or like have your products and stuff. But it's still cool at the same time because you're making that impact and that at least somebody is supporting you at a minimum. And hopefully they're getting some value from the products that you launch. So it's a really neat thing that to have that product out there. And the book was my first physical product. So that was really cool as well. It's like, oh man, like this is mine. Like this is really cool. It's something tangible instead of just doing coaching and helping people with that and get on a Zoom call to have those conversations and doing those coaching calls. If it's like this is actual physical thing, it's really cool.
yeah, and yeah, I think that's the second tangible thing that I launched. But I don't know, man. I'm such a, and I know, I think I remember right. I think you served back in the day, but like, I'm like such a gun that's just shooting boom, 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 boom. So it's like
Mhm.
product. And then like a month later, boom, product, boom. And what it is, I just need to slow down a little bit and kind of enjoy,
Mhm.
savor the flavors or whatever the running joke is back in the
Yeah.
day. So it's like,
I don't think you necessarily need to do that, but I think you need to make sure that the products all intertwine together and make sense. It's not like, oh, you think about supplements, you think like fitness, like, oh yeah, I'm this fitness guy, but then all of a sudden I'm like this guy writing a Christian business book, and then next thing you know, I'm doing this apparel line that I mean, I don't know, I guess for rap artists, I'm just throwing something out there. Like it's like, wait, what? How did those tie together? So it's really about interweaving all your products and having them all tied together, which goes back to the brand you're building. So how do all of those build up that brand and how they come back to that central theme for you? And so that's would be my suggestion, to you, to those of you that are listening. If you're trying to launch multiple products, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're like Chad, and it's like this month it's this product, this month, the next month is that product. But how are they relating? Now, if you are somehow able to be a multi-entrepreneur where you're launching multiple businesses, that's a different story. And they have their own brands, their own ideas, their own mission statements behind it. That's one thing. But if they're all supposed to be under this one umbrella, this one brand, you need to make sure they're all intertwined. So that's what I'd say. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that you're launching one thing after another, as long as you're still keeping up with others. Now, if you launch the supplements and now, okay, guys, I launched it, and then you just stop talking about it completely, and you're like, all right, hey, I'm launching a book. And then once the book's done, you stop talking about it. Then you go to the apparel brand. That's a problem. You need to make sure you're still talking about all of them, because people are going to forget, man. Like, I've had the book out for 8 months, and there's still people that I know, they're like, oh, you got a book? And it's like, oh yeah. And like, well, yeah, I've had it out for like 8 months. Like, what? Like, so that's my fault. I haven't talked about it enough, but that's where I get at, is that you need to make sure you continue to talk about those things, not just launch it and then people forget about it.
Yeah, and this year for me is maintaining, and I'm gonna use the term
Mhm.
maintaining, not that it's okay. You launched a lot last year or into like this
Mhm.
last month. Now it's time to build. So maintain. So like just keep your mind focused on the few things, maintain the babies,
Mhm.
make sure they're fed. And then now they're eating. Now let's feed them some more is the best analogy I can use on that. And that's where this year my mind's at, where it's, like I said, I was down sick when the book launched and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But like, how do I take care of this one first? How do I take care of this
Mhm.
one first? And um, yeah, I mean, like, dude, like me and you can agree. You have a podcast, you can have a blog, you can have everything else. And all of a sudden you're doing like 900 freaking things
Yeah.
and you're losing out on personal time.
Mhm. That's all
So
systems and processes, man. You got to find the ways to make everything shorter, and that's what I've done, trying to refine the podcast. Instead of me going out and do all research to find the information on my guests, now I now have an intake form that whenever they sign up on Calendly, which is a scheduling, like, hey, here's my schedule, rather than going back and forth in Facebook Messenger saying, hey, what time works for you? This, just, hey, here's my calendar, sign up for a time. And of course, if something doesn't work, we can talk about it then. But because I do have more flexibility than my calendar shows for the most part, but I can't just put everything on there. So I put certain times. That way I know those times for sure I'm available. But if something don't work out, we can talk about it. But then once they sign up on the calendar, then I send them the intake form. And I haven't found a way yet to, well, actually, I probably could find a way to link that calendar to it, but I need to set that up, or the intake form after the calendar. So after they submit the calendar invite, then they get the intake form. They fill out the intake form. If they don't fill it out, then they don't come on the podcast. And that's something I have written in there now. Is I in the past I've been more lenient about that, and it's like, okay, we reschedule 2 or 3 times or whatever. But now it's like, hey, if you don't do this within 48 hours, is I mean, I need time to prepare and then have all that for the show notes and everything. But if you don't fill it out within 48 hours of the scheduled event, then if I'm canceling it and you can't be on my show. And it really just shows that you're serious about this, and you start getting people that are going to be better guests. But really just finding ways to automate the process, to have those systems in place on your different things is going to help free up that time. And then as we start growing, we'll be able to get those VAs, which will really help with a lot of that admin stuff, which of course we don't want to do, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, but finding those systems is going to be a big portion that'll help with that time, that or lack of time there. So that's what I would suggest.
Well, I was going to say, since we're going on the systems and Calendly and stuff, where can
Mm.
my listeners go and reach you, or anyone that's listening to the podcast go out and reach you at?
So you can reach me either on Instagram at Philip Sessions. So that's 1 L and like class sessions, Sessions, or you can reach me on my website at speakingsessions.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you for coming on. And I definitely will have you back because I know how our relationship is. So thank you for this first episode, and we'll go from there, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.